My name is Mackenzie, and at 31, I never expected my life would become a cautionary tale about trust. Just last month, I sold my tech startup for $20 million, ready to buy my dream home with a $10 million cash offer. Growing up with my struggling single mom Diane and younger sister Rebecca, I thought I knew what family meant. So when I needed a safe place for the cash overnight, I chose my mom's house. By morning, both my mom and sister had vanished with the money, leaving just a taunting note. If you're wondering why I'm smiling, stick around. Before I continue, drop a comment letting me know where you're watching from, hit that like button, and subscribe to see how I turned this betrayal into the sweetest revenge. Let me take you back to where it all began. I grew up in a cramped two-bedroom apartment in Portland with peeling wallpaper and a persistent mold problem. Mom worked double shifts at the local diner, coming home with swollen feet and the permanent scent of grease clinging to her uniform. Money was always tight. Christmas meant one modest gift, birthdays were celebrated with homemade cake, and vacations simply didn't exist in our vocabulary. From an early age, I understood that education was my ticket out. While other kids played after school, I studied. When my classmates went to parties on weekends, I worked part-time at the local grocery store, saving every penny. My determination bordered on obsession. I remember my high school counselor, Mrs. Patterson, telling me, "Mackenzie, you work like someone's chasing you." And in a way, something was the fear of remaining trapped in the cycle of poverty. My efforts paid off when I received a full scholarship to MIT. Even then, I worked 2 part-time jobs to cover living expenses. I survived on ramen noodles and free campus events, sending what little I could spare back home to help Mom and Rebecca. Those college years were a blur of lectures, coding marathons, and late-night shifts at the campus library. After graduation, I landed a junior developer position at a small tech firm. Within 2 years, I had developed enough industry connections and confidence to branch out on my own. My startup, Secure Flow, specialized in encryption software for financial institutions. We struggled initially, 18-hour workdays, maxed out credit cards, and the constant terror of failure. But by our 3rd year, we'd secured major clients and began turning significant profits. Throughout this journey, my relationship with my mother Diane remained complicated. On the surface, she seemed supportive, congratulating me on achievements and proudly telling her friends about my success. But there were moments when I caught a flicker of something else in her eyes, resentment, perhaps. When I'd excitedly share a business breakthrough, she'd listen quietly before changing the subject to Rebecca's struggles or her own health problems. As my company grew, I made sure to share my success. I bought Mom a modest but comfortable 3-bedroom house in a nice neighborhood, complete with a garden she'd always wanted. I paid off her medical debts and set up a monthly allowance generous enough that she could finally quit waitressing. She accepted everything with a smile that never quite reached her eyes, saying things like, "Well, I guess all those years of sacrifice were worth it," or "At least one of my girls made something of herself." Rebecca was 5 years younger than me and seemingly allergic to responsibility. While I had been driven and focused, she drifted through life, dropping out of community college after 1 semester, cycling through retail jobs, and always having some drama with friends or boyfriends. Mom made endless excuses for her. "She's just finding herself," or "Not everyone can be as focused as you, Mackenzie." In recent years, Rebecca's financial dependence had increased. Every few months, there would be an emergency, car repairs, overdue rent, unexpected medical bills. I always sent money, though I'd occasionally suggest career counseling or offer to help her find a steadier job. These suggestions were usually met with teary phone calls to Mom about how I thought I was better than everyone else. Last Thanksgiving, I noticed something odd. Rebecca kept stepping outside to take phone calls, speaking in hushed tones. When I asked about it, Mom jumped in to say Rebecca was finally seeing someone promising. The subject was quickly changed. Looking back now, I should have paid more attention to the secretive glances they exchanged. Despite these undercurrents, I never doubted their love. We were family, after all. When the offer came to acquire SecureFlow for $20 million, they were the first people I called. Mom cried and said she was proud. Rebecca squealed and asked if this meant I could help her start the boutique she'd been talking about. I was too caught up in my own excitement to notice how quickly their thoughts turned to what my success meant for them. The acquisition process took months of negotiations, legal reviews, and paperwork. Throughout it all, I dreamed of the house I'd spotted in the hills overlooking the city, a modern architectural marvel with walls of glass, an infinity pool, and enough space to finally have a proper home office and guest rooms for family visits. At $28 million, it was extravagant. But I planned to offer $10 million in cash to beat out other interested buyers. My life seemed perfect. My company's technology would reach more people under its new ownership. I had financial security beyond anything I could have imagined growing up, and I was about to purchase my dream home. I was even engaged to Jason, a kind and grounded environmental engineer who loved me for who I was, not what I had. How quickly it would all unravel, I had no idea. The day I walked into Pacific Northwest Bank to withdraw $10 million remains vivid in my memory. The private banking manager, Mr. Thompson, a balding man with round spectacles and perpetually furrowed brows, couldn't hide his concern. "Ms. Walker, I strongly advise against this," he said, tapping his Mont Blanc pen nervously against his leather portfolio. "A wire transfer is standard for real estate transactions of this magnitude. Cash presents unnecessary risks." I'd anticipated resistance. "I understand your concern, Mr. Thompson, but this property has multiple interested buyers. A cash offer will give me the edge I need. The seller has specifically mentioned preferring the immediacy of cash." He leaned forward, lowering his voice as though sharing a secret. "Even if that's the case, we're talking about $10 million in physical currency. That's $20,500 bills. It would fill several large duffel bags and weigh approximately 22 pounds per million. I'd done my research. I'm aware. I've arranged for private security to accompany me directly to a secure location. The money will only be in my possession for 48 hours at most before the closing meeting." After nearly an hour of similar exchanges and signing multiple liability waivers, Mr. Thompson reluctantly began the process. I had to wait 3 business days for the bank to prepare such a large cash withdrawal. They needed to bring in currency from regional reserves, a fact that only reinforced my belief that a cash offer would impress the sellers. When I told Jason about my plan that evening over dinner at our favorite Italian restaurant, his reaction mirrored Mr. Thompson's. "Mackenzie, this is insane," he said, setting down his fork, his penne alla vodka forgotten. "You're putting yourself at risk. What if someone follows you from the bank? What if there's a robbery?" "I've hired Kyle's security firm," I countered, referring to my college friend who ran a personal security company. 2 armed guards will escort me from the bank to Mom's house. The money will be in her safe overnight, and then the guards will accompany me to the closing." "Why are Mom's safe? Why not a bank safety deposit box?" His brown eyes reflected genuine concern. "Bank boxes have size limitations. Besides, Mom's safe is practically a vault. I had it installed for her 3 years ago when she started collecting those ridiculous porcelain figurines she's so worried about." Jason ran a hand through his dark hair, a gesture I knew signaled his frustration. "This is unnecessary, Mac. Wire transfers exist for a reason." The Richardsons had 3 offers fall through due to financing issues. Cash means certainty. Trust me, I know what I'm doing. I reached across the table for his hand. "It's one night, and then we'll have our dream home." He squeezed my hand but didn't look convinced. "I just don't understand why you won't let me come with you." "Because you have that important presentation for the river restoration project." "It's only one night. I'll be perfectly safe at Mom's." 2 days later. I stood in a private room at Pacific Northwest Bank as two tellers counted out $10 million in front of me. The money was placed in special tamper-evident bags, which were then loaded into 3 nondescript duffel bags. As promised, Kyle had sent 2 of his best men, Trevor, a former military police officer, and Marcus, who'd worked executive protection for tech CEOs. The drive to Mom's house was uneventful. We took an indirect route, switching lanes often to ensure we weren't being followed. Trevor drove while Marcus sat beside me in the back seat, his hand never far from his concealed weapon. When we arrived at Mom's modest suburban home, her eyes widened at the sight of the security team. Rebecca was there too, supposedly helping Mom prepare for a garden club meeting. I now realize that was just another lie. Goodness, Mackenzie, Mom said as Trevor and Marcus carried the bags inside. Is all this security really necessary? $10 million isn't something to take lightly, I replied, directing the men toward the home office where the safe was located. The safe was built into the wall behind a sliding bookcase, a bit dramatic. But Mom had insisted on the hidden feature when I had it installed. It was a serious piece of equipment, fireproof, with an electronic lock and backup key system. It could easily hold all 3 duffel bags with room to spare. As Trevor and Marcus placed the money inside, I couldn't help but notice Mom and Rebecca hovering in the doorway, their eyes fixed on the bags. At the time, I interpreted their interest as natural curiosity. Now, I understand it was something far more calculating. We'll pick you up tomorrow at 9. Trevor said as they prepared to leave. Call if you need anything before then. After they left, an odd tension filled the house. Mom busied herself in the kitchen, preparing dinner with unusual enthusiasm. Rebecca peppered me with questions about the house I was buying, its location, and whether I planned to install a similar safe there. During dinner, Mom asked questions she'd never shown interest in before. So this money, she said, twirling spaghetti around her fork, it's all in cash? Not checks or anything. Yes, all cash. $500 bills mostly, I answered between bites. And the bank just lets you walk out with that much? Rebecca asked, her voice higher than usual. Not exactly. There was quite a process, and as you saw, I hired security. Mom nodded thoughtfully. And these people tomorrow, they're expecting cash? They won't find it strange? The real estate world operates differently at this level, I explained. Cash offers speak volumes, especially for properties like this one. Later that evening, Mom received a phone call that she took in her bedroom, door closed. When she returned, her cheeks were flushed. Everything okay? I asked. Oh, just Helena from Garden Club confirming tomorrow's meeting, she said, not quite meeting my eyes. I slept in my old bedroom that night, the twin bed uncomfortable for my adult frame. Around midnight, I thought I heard whispers in the hallway but dismissed it as my imagination or perhaps Mom checking on me like she used to when I was a child. Had I known it would be the last normal night of my life, I might have paid more attention to the signs, the unusual interest in the money, the secret phone calls, the subtle excitement that seemed to vibrate through the house. Instead, exhausted from the stress of the withdrawal and upcoming purchase, I fell into a deep sleep, completely unaware of what morning would bring. The next morning, I woke to sunlight streaming through the faded curtains of my childhood bedroom. For a moment, I felt like a teenager again, ready to tackle another day of high school. Then reality flooded back. I was 31, about to buy my dream home, and had $10 million locked in my mother's safe. The house was unusually quiet. Normally, Mom would be in the kitchen by 7, the smell of coffee and toast filling the air. I checked my phone, 7:45 a.m. Plenty of time before Trevor and Marcus would arrive at 9. Mom? I called out, padding down the hallway in my pajamas. No answer. I knocked on her bedroom door. When there was no response, I pushed it open to find the bed made, looking as though it hadn't been slept in. Strange, but not alarming. Perhaps she'd left early for her garden club meeting. Rebecca? I tried, knocking on the guest room door. Again, silence. An uneasy feeling began to creep over me as I walked to the home office. The bookcase that concealed the safe was slightly ajar. I slid it open fully, my heartbeat accelerating. The safe door stood open, its contents gone. No duffel bags. No $10 million. Nothing. No, I whispered, my voice rising with each repetition until I was screaming. No. I tore through the house, checking every room, every closet, as if the missing money might be hiding somewhere. In the kitchen, I found a note propped against the coffee maker, written in my mother's neat handwriting. Mackenzie, thanks for your money. Now we can live our dream life. Don't try to find us. Mom and Rebecca. My legs gave way, and I sank to the kitchen floor, the note clutched in my trembling hand. The room seemed to spin around me as the truth settled in my gut like a block of ice. My own mother and sister had stolen my money and fled. I fumbled for my phone and called Jason, barely able to form coherent sentences through my sobs. They're gone. The money, all of it. They took everything, I managed to choke out. Mackenzie, slow down. Who's gone? What happened? His voice was thick with sleep. I'd woken him. Mom and Rebecca. They stole the money. $10 million, Jason. They cleared out the safe and disappeared. 20 minutes later, Jason burst through the front door, still wearing the sweatpants and MIT t-shirt he slept in, his hair uncombed and eyes wild with concern. He found me sitting at the kitchen table, staring blankly at my phone. I've called them 16 times, I said without looking up. Mom's phone goes straight to voicemail. Rebecca's rings once, then disconnects. They've blocked me. Jason knelt beside me, taking my hands in his. We need to call the police. Right now. The next few hours passed in a blur. 2 patrol officers arrived first, followed by Detective Sarah Martinez, a sharp-eyed woman with salt and pepper hair pulled back in a tight ponytail. She took detailed notes as I explained the situation, her expression giving away nothing. Let me make sure I understand, she said after I finished. You voluntarily brought $10 million in cash to your mother's house, placed it in her safe, and now both your mother and sister are gone, along with the money. Put like that. It sounded impossibly naive. I nodded, shame burning my cheeks. And you have documentation for this cash withdrawal. I showed her the bank receipts and liability waivers on my phone. She photographed each one, then asked, Do you have reason to believe they were planning this? Any unusual behavior recently? Nothing concrete, I admitted. They seemed interested in the money, but that's natural, isn't it? $10 million in cash isn't something you see every day. Detective Martinez's expression softened slightly. Ms. Walker, I'll be honest with you. This is a complex situation. Because you willingly brought the money to your mother's house and placed it in her safe, it could potentially be argued this was a gift or a family financial arrangement gone wrong. A gift? I was buying a house. They knew that. This was theft. I understand. And will investigate thoroughly. But you should prepare yourself. Family matters involving money can be challenging from a legal perspective. After the detective left, promising to put out an alert for my mother and sister, Jason held me as I alternated between sobbing and rage. Who does this? I kept asking. What kind of mother steals from her own daughter? My phone chimed with a text message from an unknown number. With shaking hands, I opened it to find a photo of Mom and Rebecca boarding what appeared to be a private plane, both wearing large sunglasses and wide smiles. The message read, Always wanted to fly private. Thanks for making it possible. 5 minutes later, a voicemail notification appeared. It was from Rebecca, likely using a burner phone. Hey sis, her voice dripped with false sweetness. Bet you're freaking out right now. Well, get over it. You've had everything handed to you your whole life while Mom sacrificed everything. All those years of watching you succeed while I struggled? That money is our turn. You can make another 10 million with your big brain, but this is our only chance. Don't bother looking for us. By the time you hear this, we'll be in a country with no extradition treaty. Love you." The casual cruelty of her words felt like physical blows. Had I really been handed everything? I'd worked myself to exhaustion for years, taken enormous risks with my company, and always shared my success with them. I'd bought Mom a house, paid her bills, helped Rebecca countless times when she was in financial trouble. They planned this, I whispered. The realization dawning. This wasn't opportunistic. They saw the news about the company acquisition months ago and started planning then. Jason paced the living room. We should call Detective Martinez back, tell her about the text and voicemail. I nodded numbly, still trying to process the magnitude of the betrayal. My own mother and sister. The people I'd trusted most in the world. The people I thought would always have my back. They'd seen my success not as something to celebrate, but as something to exploit. As Jason called the detective, another terrible thought struck me. The house. My dream home. The purchase that was supposed to happen today. I was now short $10 million with no way to replace it in time. The life I'd worked so hard to build was crumbling around me. And the worst part was that the people who destroyed it were the very ones I'd tried hardest to lift up along the way. The following days blurred together in a haze of police interviews, lawyer consultations, and sleepless nights. Detective Sarah Martinez became a constant presence, her compassionate professionalism offering a small anchor in the storm my life had become. We've confirmed they left on a private charter to the Cayman Islands, she informed me 3 days after the theft, sitting across from me at my kitchen table. From there, we believe they took another flight, but we're still tracing that movement. How did they even arrange a private plane? I asked, cradling a cup of coffee I couldn't taste. Your sister contacted a charter service 2 weeks ago. They paid cash, presumably some of your money, and used fake identification. Very methodical. She hesitated before adding. This level of planning suggests they may have had help. What kind of help? We're looking into some connections your mother appears to have made recently. There's evidence she was in contact with individuals known to facilitate this type of disappearance. The implication hit me like a physical blow. You're saying my mother was talking to criminals? Planning this? Detective Martinez's expression remained neutral. We found searches on her computer for countries without extradition treaties dating back 3 months. There were also encrypted email exchanges we're still working to decode. It felt like discovering a stranger had been living in my mother's skin. The woman who'd lectured me about returning extra change when a cashier made a mistake had been plotting a multi-million-dollar theft for months. What about relatives? Could they be staying with family somewhere? Detective Martinez asked. I shook my head. Mom has a sister in Arizona, Aunt Pamela. But they haven't spoken in years after some falling out. Rebecca mentioned cousins in Florida once, but I've never met them. The detective made a note. We'll look into both. Even estranged family can become attractive when there's money involved. After she left, I called Richard Bennett, the family lawyer who'd handled my company's contracts and my personal affairs for years. His response to the situation was blunt. This is theft. Plain and simple, he stated firmly when we met in his downtown office. The documentation from the bank clearly establishes the money was yours, withdrawn for a specific purpose. Your mother had no rightful claim to it. Detective Martinez mentioned it might be complicated because I put it in Mom's safe willingly, I said. Richard removed his glasses, pinching the bridge of his nose. It complicates things, yes, but doesn't change the fundamental nature of the crime. However, pursuing this internationally will be challenging. We need to file emergency motions, contact authorities in likely destination countries, and freeze any accounts they might transfer the money into. How long will all that take? His expression told me what I didn't want to hear. Weeks at minimum. Possibly months. And even then, success isn't guaranteed, especially if they've planned as carefully as it appears. I left his office with a growing sense of dread. The legal process would be lengthy, expensive, and might ultimately prove fruitless. Meanwhile, my mother and sister were free, spending my money with abandon. The emotional toll was becoming unbearable. I started seeing Dr. Elaine Foster, a therapist specializing in trauma and betrayal, twice weekly. In her softly lit office, surrounded by potted plants and abstract art, I struggled to articulate the depth of my pain. I keep replaying every interaction, looking for signs I missed. I admitted during our third session. Was Mom always this person? Did she always resent me? Was every "I love you" just part of a long con? Dr. Foster leaned forward slightly. The human mind isn't designed to process betrayal of this magnitude, especially from those we've categorized as safe people. It challenges our entire understanding of reality. I trusted them completely, I whispered. I would have given them anything they asked for. Why steal from me? Some people develop distorted thinking patterns around money and fairness. They may have created a narrative where they deserve this, where taking was justified because of perceived imbalances. It doesn't make it true, and it certainly doesn't make it right. These sessions helped, but only marginally. Nightmares plagued my sleep, dreams where I chased my mother and sister through endless airport terminals, always a few steps behind. I'd wake gasping, drenched in sweat, reaching for Jason only to find his side of the bed empty. He'd taken to sleeping in the guest room, claiming my restlessness kept him from getting the sleep he needed for work. Our relationship was another casualty of the theft. What had once been a partnership full of warmth and understanding was becoming increasingly strained. Small disagreements escalated into arguments. Silence stretched between us like physical distance. You need to start thinking about moving forward, Jason said one evening, after I'd spent hours on the phone with Detective Martinez discussing a possible sighting of my mother in Singapore. It's been almost 4 weeks, Mackenzie. Moving forward? They stole $10 million from me. I know, he sighed, exhaustion evident in his voice. But you're letting this consume you. You've barely left the apartment. You're not sleeping. You're not eating properly. You turned down that consulting offer from Next Tech. Because I can't focus on work right now. That's exactly my point. Your entire life has become about finding them. There's more to you than this situation, Mac. I couldn't make him understand that this wasn't just about the money. It was about the complete shattering of my reality. Every childhood memory was now tainted. Every sacrifice my mother had supposedly made for me called into question. Meanwhile, the investigation continued to uncover disturbing details. Mom had apparently been maintaining a secret email account for years, one I knew nothing about. In it, Detective Martinez found communications with Rebecca dating back 18 months, discussing what they called the plan. There were references to casino visits and significant gambling debts my mother had accumulated without my knowledge. Bank records showed she had taken out a second mortgage on the house I'd bought her, presumably to cover these debts. There were also records of small thefts from previous employers, nothing major enough to trigger prosecution, but establishing a pattern of dishonesty that I'd been completely blind to. Most disturbing was a folder of documents Detective Martinez found hidden in a crawl space above Mom's closet. It contained detailed notes on my company's acquisition process, articles about my success carefully annotated in my mother's handwriting, and a list titled Mackenzie's Weaknesses. At the top of that list, trusts family completely. Each discovery was another knife twisting in an already fatal wound. The mother I thought I knew, the woman who'd worked double shifts to keep a roof over our heads, who'd sat up with me when I had nightmares, who'd beamed with pride at my college graduation, was a carefully constructed fiction. Or perhaps worse, she had once been that person. But somewhere along the way, resentment and greed had corroded whatever love she'd felt for me, leaving behind only calculation and opportunity. As the investigation stretched into its 6th week, the practical ramifications of the theft became increasingly difficult to ignore. The sellers of my dream home had accepted another offer. The financial advisors I'd arranged to help manage my newfound wealth were asking uncomfortable questions about the missing funds. Rumors were circulating in the tech community about my judgment and stability. My life was unraveling thread by thread, and I couldn't see how to stop it. 6 weeks after the theft, I sat in Detective Martinez's office, the now familiar space doing nothing to soften the blow of her latest update. The Singaporean authorities found the hotel where they stayed. But they checked out 3 days ago, she explained, sliding photos across her desk. They've changed their appearances. I stared at the surveillance images. My mother's previously shoulder-length gray hair was now short and dyed a rich auburn. Rebecca had gone blonde and was wearing colored contacts that changed her brown eyes to blue. Both had lost weight and were dressed in expensive designer clothes I didn't recognize. They don't even look like themselves, I murmured, tracing my finger over my mother's face. The woman in the photo was a stranger with my mother's bone structure. They're using the names Catherine and Emily Bradford. We believe they purchased these identities on the dark web. They're elaborate forgeries with digital fingerprints going back several years. How is that even possible? Detective Martinez leaned back in her chair. With enough money, unfortunately, almost anything is possible. The network they're working with specializes in this type of identity transformation. They create paper trails, digital footprints, even social media histories. So you're saying they could be anyone, anywhere, and we'd have no way of knowing? Not exactly. These identities were discovered because we knew to look for them. But yes, they're making tracking them significantly more difficult. I left the police station feeling hollowed out. The investigation was ongoing, but every lead seemed to dissolve into nothing. My mother and sister were professional ghosts now, slipping through international jurisdictions with their new identities and seemingly limitless funds. When I returned to my apartment, I found 3 voice messages waiting. The first was from Richard Bennett, my lawyer, with an update on the international legal filings. The second was from the real estate agent who'd been helping me find a new dream home, checking if I wanted to view a property that had just come on the market. The third was from Marcus Wilson, a potential business partner I'd been in talks with before the theft. His message was polite but clear. Given the recent, complications in your personal situation, I think it's best if we put our discussions on hold for now. Call me when things settle down. It wasn't the first professional opportunity that had evaporated since news of the theft broke. A profile in Tech Innovators Monthly had been quietly canceled. Speaking engagements were being rescheduled. Former colleagues who'd been eager to discuss potential collaborations suddenly had full calendars. The tech world, for all its talk of disruption and risk-taking, was deeply conservative when it came to personal instability. No one wanted to align themselves with someone whose judgment was so publicly called into question. After all, if I couldn't protect my own assets from my family, how could I be trusted with investors' money or sensitive industry partnerships? The breaking point came that evening when Jason returned from work, his expression carefully neutral as he set his laptop bag on the counter. I got a call from Detective Martinez today, he said. She wanted to know if I'd heard anything from your mother or sister. And had you? The question came out sharper than I intended. His face hardened. Of course not. But the fact that you'd even ask that says everything about where we are right now. Where we are. Yes, Mackenzie. Where we are. He gestured between us. You don't sleep. You barely eat. You spend every waking moment either talking to the detective or that lawyer or scrolling through international banking regulations. When was the last time we had a conversation that wasn't about the theft? I tried to remember but couldn't. The theft had become my whole world, the pursuit of justice my only purpose. They stole $10 million, Jason. What am I supposed to do? Just let it go. No, but you need to find a way to live while you're dealing with this. It's been 6 weeks, and you're still in exactly the same place emotionally as you were the day it happened. That's not fair. What's not fair is watching the woman I love disappear into this black hole of obsession and being completely powerless to help her. His voice cracked slightly. I've tried to be patient. I've tried to be supportive. But you're not letting me in, Mac. You're shutting down every attempt I make to connect with you. I felt defensive anger rising. So this is my fault? I'm the victim here. Yes, you are. But you're using that as an excuse to push away everyone who cares about you. Your friends have stopped calling because you never return their messages. You've turned down every invitation to get out of this apartment. And when I try to talk about anything other than the theft, you shut down or find a way to circle back to it. Deep down, I knew he was right, but admitting it felt like another surrender, another loss I couldn't afford. What do you want from me? I asked, my voice small. Jason ran a hand through his hair. I want you to decide if there's room in your life for anything besides this pursuit, because right now it doesn't feel like there is. Are you giving me an ultimatum? I'm asking for honesty, Mackenzie. Can you see a future beyond this? Can you imagine a day when you're not consumed by finding them? I opened my mouth to say yes, to promise him I could move forward, but the words wouldn't come. The truth was, I couldn't imagine it. The betrayal had become my identity. The pursuit had become my purpose. I think I need some space, Jason finally said into the silence. I'm going to stay with Greg for a while. When you're ready to have a life again, a real life. Not this holding pattern, call me. He packed a bag while I sat motionless on the couch, unable to find the words to make him stay, unsure if I even wanted to. When the door closed behind him, the apartment felt impossibly empty. I spent that night alone, staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment of the past 6 weeks, then expanding backward, examining my entire relationship with my mother and sister through this new, tainted lens. Had there been signs all along? Had I been willfully blind because acknowledging the truth was too painful? Or had they genuinely changed, corrupted by the prospect of wealth beyond their imagining? By morning, I'd reached rock bottom. I hadn't slept. I hadn't eaten. Jason was gone. My professional reputation was in tatters. The money was still missing, and despite weeks of international investigation, my mother and sister remained free, enjoying the fruits of their betrayal. I stood in my kitchen, staring at my reflection in the darkened window. The woman looking back at me was a stranger, hollow-eyed, gaunt, defeated. This wasn't who I was. This wasn't who I wanted to be. Something had to change. I just didn't know what or how. The call that changed everything came at 2:17 a.m., jolting me from a restless sleep. I fumbled for my phone, squinting at the screen. Trevor Sullivan, one of the security guards who'd escorted me to my mother's house that fateful day. Trevor? What's wrong? My voice was thick with sleep. Ms. Walker, I apologize for calling so late. But I need to speak with you immediately. In person. It's about your situation. Fully awake now, I sat up. It's the middle of the night. Can this wait until morning? No, ma'am. It can't. What I need to tell you shouldn't be discussed over the phone. I can be at your apartment in 20 minutes. His tone left no room for argument. All right. I'll be here. Exactly 19 minutes later, my doorbell rang. Trevor stood in the hallway, still wearing his security company polo shirt, his expression grave. Thank you for seeing me, he said as I let him in. Is the apartment secure? No cleaning service or maintenance staff been here recently? No, just me. What's this about, Trevor? He scanned the living room before speaking. The money your mother and sister took? It wasn't real. The world seemed to tilt on its axis. What? The cash in those bags was counterfeit. Sophisticated fakes, but fake nonetheless. I sank onto the couch, struggling to process his words. That's impossible. I withdrew it from Pacific Northwest Bank myself. You were there. Trevor nodded. Yes, but what you don't know is that Kyle, my boss, has a standard protocol for high-value transports. All cash bundles are tagged with tracking devices and security strips. When we placed the bags in your mother's safe, I activated those systems. And the trackers showed the bags leaving your mother's house at 4:12 a.m. and traveling to a private airfield. But here's the thing, the security strips detect the chemical composition of real currency. 2 hours after the bags left your mother's house, the strips registered a complete change in composition. The real money had been swapped out. My mind raced, trying to make sense of this revelation. So someone stole the real money before my mother took the bags? A double theft? Trevor shifted uncomfortably. Not exactly. The swap happened at Kyle's secure facility the night before we delivered it to your mother's house. The money was replaced with high-quality counterfeits, visually indistinguishable from real currency. Are you saying Kyle stole my money? Anger began to replace confusion. No, Ms. Walker. Trevor took a deep breath. I'm saying you arranged the switch yourself. For a moment, I thought I'd misheard him. What? 3 days before the withdrawal, you contacted Kyle privately. You said you had concerns about your mother's intentions and wanted to set up a contingency plan. You had us swap the real cash for counterfeits and secure the authentic currency in our most protected vault. My head spun. Trevor, I never did that. I would remember something like that. He reached into his pocket and withdrew a folded document. This is the special instruction form you signed. That's your signature, isn't it? I stared at the paper. At my unmistakable signature authorizing exactly what Trevor had described. A memory flickered, Kyle pulling me aside at the bank, a brief conversation I'd dismissed as standard security protocol. Signing something without fully reading it amid the stress of the massive withdrawal. I don't remember this specifically, I admitted. But everything was so chaotic that day. Kyle wanted to contact you immediately after your mother took the bags, but our monitoring system malfunctioned. We only confirmed the switch happened yesterday when we did a full system diagnostic. He sent me to tell you in person because of the sensitive nature of the situation. So my mother and sister have bags full of extremely convincing but ultimately worthless paper. The real $10 million is in our secure facility, waiting for your instructions. Laughter bubbled up from somewhere deep inside me, a strange, almost hysterical sound that I couldn't control. All this time, all this anguish. And my mother and sister had stolen worthless counterfeits. The cosmic justice of it was almost too perfect to believe. I need to see it, I said when I could finally speak normally again. The real money. I need to see it with my own eyes. Of course. I can take you there now. 2 hours later, I stood in a climate-controlled vault beneath Kyle's security company headquarters, staring at 3 familiar duffel bags. With trembling hands, I unzipped one, revealing stacks of genuine $500 bills, exactly as I remembered from the bank. It's all here. Kyle confirmed, standing beside me. $10 million untouched. And the tracking devices in the fake money? I asked, a plan already forming in my mind. Still active. We can monitor their location in real time. He showed me a tablet displaying a blinking on a map, currently showing movement in Monaco. I straightened my shoulders, feeling truly awake for the first time in weeks. I want everything you have on their movements. Every location, every stop, every transaction you can trace. Ms. Walker, if I may ask. What are you planning to do? A smile spread across my face, not the broken, hollow expression I'd worn for weeks, but something sharper, more determined. Something I should have done from the beginning. I'm going to take control of the situation. Over the next 72 hours, I transformed from victim to strategist. I assembled a small, trusted team, Kyle for security expertise, Detective Martinez, who was initially skeptical but quickly convinced by the evidence, Haley Winters, my former chief operations officer and closest friend, and Richard Bennett, my lawyer, who helped navigate the international legal complexities. We gathered in a conference room at Kyle's facility, surrounded by maps, financial records, and surveillance photos. The tracking data from the counterfeit money had given us a detailed picture of my mother and sister's movements across Europe and Asia. They've established a pattern, I explained, pointing to the map. After Singapore, They went to Dubai, then Monaco, now they're in Nice. They're staying at five-star resorts, shopping at luxury boutiques, dining at Michelin-starred restaurants. They're spending what they think is my money as quickly as possible, based on their current rate of expenditure. They'd run through all 10 million within 18 months, Haley noted, analyzing the financial data we'd compiled. They're not just spending, Detective Martinez added. They're flaunting. Look at these social media accounts we've identified. She displayed several Instagram profiles showing carefully cropped photos of luxury goods, exotic locations, and champagne toasts. Though the faces were never clearly visible, I recognized my mother's hands, my sister's distinctive posture. They want me to see it, I realized. They think I'm tracking these accounts, watching them enjoy what they stole from me. Which gives us an advantage, Kyle said. They're predictable. Based on their social media posts and spending patterns, we believe they're headed to Milan next, likely arriving within 3 days. Then that's where we'll be waiting, I decided. I want to see their faces when they realize what they actually took. The plan came together with military precision. Private investigators in France confirmed my mother and sister had booked flights to Milan. Hotel reservations were discovered under their false identities at the exclusive Palazzo Parigi. Richard arranged for cooperation from Italian financial authorities, interested in the movement of counterfeit currency. 5 days later, I sat in a first-class seat bound for Milan, Haley beside me reviewing our strategy one final time. For the first time since the theft, I felt something like peace. Not because I was about to confront the people who had betrayed me, but because I had reclaimed my agency, my power. Are you nervous? Haley asked as our plane began its descent. I considered the question carefully. No, I replied, surprising myself with the truth of it. I'm ready. Milan greeted us with unseasonably warm sunshine and clear blue skies, as if the universe itself approved of what was about to unfold. Our team established a command center in a suite at a hotel near the Palazzo Parigi, where Kyle's surveillance confirmed my mother and sister had checked in that morning. They've made dinner reservations at La Scala restaurant for 8 o'clock, Detective Martinez informed us, reviewing the intelligence gathered by our Italian counterparts. Private table in the back, champagne pre-ordered. Perfect, I said, studying the restaurant's floor plan. We'll confront them there. Public enough that they can't make a scene. Private enough for what needs to be said. Richard Bennett adjusted his tie nervously. Remember, we have Italian financial authorities standing by. Once we confirm the counterfeit bills are in their possession, they'll move in. I nodded, but a strange calm had settled over me. The fury that had driven me for weeks had transformed into something colder, more focused. This wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about closure, about reclaiming my narrative. At precisely 8:15 p.m., I walked into La Scala wearing a simple black dress, hair pulled back in a sleek ponytail. Haley and Kyle positioned themselves at the bar. Detective Martinez waited outside with the Italian authorities, and Richard remained at the command center, coordinating our legal response. I spotted them immediately. My mother wore an emerald green designer gown I'd never seen before, her newly auburn hair elegantly styled. Rebecca was draped in what appeared to be Chanel. Diamond earrings catching the light as she laughed at something on her phone. On the table between them sat an open bottle of Dom Perignon and a black Hermes handbag that likely contained some of the counterfeit cash. They didn't notice me until I was standing directly beside their table. Room for one more? I asked quietly. The transformation in their expressions would have been comical under different circumstances. Shock, fear, and confusion chased each other across their faces as they registered my presence. Mackenzie? My mother's voice was barely a whisper. How did you find you? It wasn't difficult. You haven't exactly been subtle. I pulled out a chair and sat down, signaling to the hovering waiter that everything was fine. Nice dress, by the way. Valentino. Rebecca recovered first, her expression hardening. What do you want? Come to beg for your money back. I smiled, the calm inside me deepening. Actually, I came to ask how you're enjoying spending it. Is it everything you dreamed it would be? My mother's eyes narrowed with suspicion. What kind of game are you playing? No game. I'm genuinely curious. $10 million is a lot of money. Has it been worth it? Worth destroying our family, worth becoming fugitives, worth throwing away any shred of integrity you might have had left. Rebecca laughed, though it sounded forced. Save the guilt trip. Mackenzie, you can make another $10 million with your precious company. This was our only chance at the life we deserve. The life you deserve, I repeated thoughtfully. And what exactly do you think that is? Freedom, my mother said, finding her voice. Freedom from struggling, from always being one emergency away from disaster. From watching you succeed while you what? Lived in the house I bought you? Accepted the monthly allowance I provided? Called me every time you needed money for another self-inflicted crisis. The words came out sharper than I intended, and I took a breath, centering myself. But that's not really why I'm here. I reached for Rebecca's handbag, ignoring her protest as I opened it and removed a stack of bills. Do you know what's special about $500 bills? They exchanged confused glances. They're rare enough that most people have never handled one, which makes them perfect for counterfeiting if you know what you're doing. I held the stack up to the light, showing them the watermark. High-quality fakes, almost impossible to detect without special equipment. The blood drained from my mother's face. What are you talking about? The money you stole? It's fake. Every single bill. Worthless. Rebecca snatched the stack from my hand. You're lying. We've been spending it for weeks. Small amounts in tourist areas where cashiers don't look too closely or at luxury stores where they were distracted by your apparent wealth. But try depositing a significant sum in a bank? Try purchasing property? It won't work. My mother's hands trembled as she reached for her wine glass. I don't believe you. The real money never left the security company's vault. It's still there, all $10 million, waiting for me to use it as intended. That's impossible, Rebecca hissed. We took it from the safe ourselves. After it had been swapped for counterfeits, yes. I leaned forward. Did you really think I'd leave that much cash unsecured without a backup plan? I knew something was wrong. I didn't want to believe it was you, but I protected myself anyway. The truth of my words registered in their expressions, dawning horror mixed with disbelief. Rebecca began frantically rifling through her bag, examining the bills more closely. Even if that's true, my mother said, her voice unsteady, you can't prove we took it. It would be your word against ours. That might have been true, except for the tracking devices embedded in the counterfeit bills. Devices that have been recording your movements across 3 continents. I gestured subtly toward the entrance, where Detective Martinez now stood with 2 Italian officers. The authorities know exactly where you've been and what you've done. Rebecca's face crumpled. You set us up. No, I corrected her gently. You set yourselves up the moment you decided to steal from me. What followed was surprisingly anticlimactic. The Italian officers approached quietly, discreetly showing their badges and requesting that we all come with them. My mother and sister were separated for questioning, their hotel rooms searched, revealing nearly $7 million in counterfeit bills they hadn't yet spent. In a sterile interview room at the Milan Financial Crimes Division, I sat across from my mother for what I knew would be the last time. Her designer dress looked out of place against the institutional furniture, her carefully applied makeup smudged from crying. Why? I asked simply. I gave you everything you ever asked for. What made you think you deserved it all? She wouldn't meet my eyes. You make it sound so simple. It is simple, Mom. You're my mother. I loved you. I trusted you. And you had everything. The words burst from her like they'd been held back for years. Everything always came so easily to you. Good grades, scholarships, success. Do you know what it's like to watch your child surpass you in every possible way? To become the charity case in your daughter's perfect life. I never saw you that way. I wanted to share my success with you. With both of you. On your terms, she countered bitterly. Your money, your rules, your constant judgment about how we lived our lives. I considered this, wondering if there was truth in her perception I hadn't recognized. Maybe there were times I was controlling with the help I offered. But stealing from me? Planning it for months? That's not a response to controlling behavior. That's something much darker. She had no answer for that. In another room, Rebecca was more forthcoming with Detective Martinez, perhaps hoping for leniency. She detailed how our mother had first proposed the idea after learning about my company's acquisition. How they'd researched ways to disappear with large sums of money, practiced opening the safe when I visited, and carefully cultivated their cover story about the Garden Club meeting. The legal proceedings were complex and spanned multiple jurisdictions. In the end, both faced charges for theft, possession of counterfeit currency, and fraud. My mother received a 5-year sentence, Rebecca 3 years with possibility of parole after 18 months. The question of whether to press charges had been agonizing. Richard and Detective Martinez both advised that I should, arguing that without consequences, they might target someone else in the future. In the end, I agreed. Though I declined to provide victim impact statements that might have lengthened their sentences. They've lost everything that matters, I told Richard as we finalized the paperwork. Their freedom, their relationship with me, their credibility. That's punishment enough. 3 months after the confrontation in Milan, I finally completed the purchase of my dream home, not the glass and steel mansion I'd originally coveted, but a warm, welcoming property on a wooded lot overlooking the city. It had fewer bedrooms but more character, wraparound porches perfect for morning coffee, and a sense of security I desperately needed. Jason had returned after our confrontation in Milan, his pride in how I'd handled the situation rekindling what had dimmed between us. We were rebuilding slowly, with regular date nights and a standing appointment with a couples therapist who was helping us process the trauma of the past months. You know what's ironic? I said to him one evening as we sat on the porch swing, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of pink and gold. If they'd just asked, I would have given them money. Not 10 million. But enough to change their lives for the better. Jason's arm tightened around my shoulders. Some people can't ask. Taking feels like power to them, especially when asking would mean acknowledging you had something they needed. I'm not sure I'll ever understand it completely, I admitted. But I'm learning to live with the questions. And I was. The nightmares had subsided. I'd returned to work, launching a consulting firm that allowed me to leverage my technical expertise without the all-consuming pressure of running a startup. I'd reconnected with friends neglected during my obsessive pursuit and found unexpected strength in vulnerability as I shared my story. Perhaps most importantly, I'd learned to trust again, cautiously, wisely, but genuinely. The betrayal had not defined me, merely informed who I would become next. You know, Jason said. Breaking the comfortable silence between us, most people would have been destroyed by what happened to you. But you turned it around. You're stronger now than you were before. I considered this, watching the last rays of sunlight disappear beyond the horizon. Not stronger, I corrected gently. Just more myself. More certain of what matters. What mattered, I'd discovered, wasn't the money or even the justice I'd obtained. It was the capacity to face betrayal without becoming bitter, to seek truth without losing compassion, to rebuild without forgetting the lessons of what had been broken. As darkness settled around us, I found myself genuinely grateful, not for what had happened, but for what it had revealed. My own resilience, the loyalty of those who had stood beside me, and the profound understanding that while trust could be shattered, it could also be rebuilt, stronger and wiser than before. I've shared this story not to satisfy anyone's curiosity about family drama or financial crime, but because I know many of you have experienced betrayal in your own lives. Maybe not on the scale, but painful nonetheless. If my experience offers any comfort or wisdom, it's this. Betrayal tells you everything about the betrayer and nothing about your worth. Have you ever experienced a betrayal that ultimately made you stronger? Share your story in the comments below. And if this resonated with you, please like and subscribe to join our community of resilient survivors. Remember, sometimes the greatest plot twists in our lives lead to the most beautiful rewritings of our stories. Thank you for listening, and until next time, trust wisely but never stop trusting completely.